Hi, I'm Chris Thompson, and today on The Business Behind the News, I'm talking about where all the money that's collected from tariffs goes and how that affects American consumers and the companies in this economy. Let's get into it. In recent months, the United States has seen a substantial rise in tariff revenue, with monthly custom duties reaching new records. According to the U.S. Treasury Department, the government has collected nearly $30 billion in tariff revenues as of July 2025 alone. This represents a staggering 242% increase compared to July of 2024. Since April 2025, when President Donald Trump introduced a universal 10% tariff on most imported goods, followed by higher levies, the total collection has surpassed $100 billion in tariffs. The government's fiscal year, which ends on September 30th, 2025, has seen custom duties grow to become the fourth largest source of federal revenue, behind only individual withholdings and corporate taxes. President Donald Trump has repeatedly celebrated the influx of money from tariffs, stating that it is a historic windfall for the nation. He's put forward a few different ideas for what to do with all that money. One of President Donald Trump's suggestions is that tariff revenue could be used to pay down the national debt, which now exceeds $36 trillion. But that's kind of a boring idea, and Americans don't seem very interested in that whole national debt conversation these days. Another idea President Donald Trump has had is giving some of that money back to Americans in the form of a tariff rebate check. That got a lot of people's attentions, but it's worth noting again that tariffs are a tax on the American people. And if we're going to be giving them back a rebate check, then why are we doing tariffs in the first place? Anyone? Anyone know? The U.S. Customs and Border Protection Department is responsible for collecting tariffs from importers at the country's ports of entry. All revenues collected by the federal government, regardless of their source, go into a general fund managed by the Treasury Department. The money from tariffs is then deposited into the Treasury Department's general account, which is the department's primary checking account. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York holds the account and acts as the government's bank. This is where all the money from taxes and other sources of revenue is held before it's spent by Congress. While the tariff revenue has helped narrow the federal budget deficit slightly and reduce the amount of new borrowing needed a little bit, it's not been kept in a separate account or used for one specific purpose. The government has a budget deficit of $1.4 trillion as of 2025, and new tariff money will only help a little bit to offset that deficit, and it's not enough to eliminate or significantly pay down the national debt all at once this year. The sharp rise in tariffs is also having an impact on American consumers and businesses. Like I said before, tariffs are a tax on the American people. So if you tax them, you're actually taking more money out of their pockets, which means that they then have less money to spend on goods and services. You know, things that fuel the economy. The economic burden of these higher taxes is often passed on to consumers through increased prices for goods. That's just economics 101. As a rule, the Federal Reserve aims to keep inflation in check around 2%. In June of 2025, the inflation rate rose to 2.6%, up from 2.4% in May. It is ultimately the American consumer and companies who are paying tariffs to the federal government, and these new tariff policies are not only a source of government revenue, but also a factor in how consumers and companies decide how to spend their money, which will have a direct effect on the country's economic landscape for years to come. Thanks for listening to my hot take about where all the money that's collected from tariffs is going. If you haven't already, smash that like button and do me a solid and subscribe to my channel so you'll be notified next time I drop a hot take. Thanks.